Alrighty.
Tweet, ¿dónde está? There it is.
Right, let's do it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 148 of the Salvaggio and Cratty Sports Podcast. Here for you on another Wednesday night, June 21st at 7:09 p.m. with some breaking news with the Bruins. We were originally going to start the show with Patriots, Celtics, then Bruins, but with the Celtics trade not finalized yet and the Bruins having some news drop recently, along with tons of NHL content as the offseason starts to heat up, we got to start with Bruins. But before we get to anything, I welcome my co-host. What's up, Ryan?
It's crazy. That's what's up. Like you said, we were gonna start with Patriots. Then I was gonna ask you maybe before we jump on here if we do Celtics, because we had the potentially breaking Celtics trade stuff on a big trade today that, like you said, is not official yet. And then that gets pushed to the back burner because of a not troublesome, maybe to some, but definitely an interesting Bruins tidbit that breaks, thankfully, right before we jump on, because like we talk about all the time, usually those things happen right after. I'm sure the Celtics trade will finally go official probably 2 minutes after we get on out of here. Hopefully, I got clear skies. I hope you do too. We're not going to get cut off by any sort of power outages again or anything like that, like last week. But I'm good. Things are happening. It's an exciting time getting all, like you said, all the breaking news and everything, and quite a bit to talk about tonight.
Yeah, and like we were talking about, Fluta Shinzawa dropped an article 54 minutes ago on The Athletic with some pretty spicy tidbits in it about what he's hearing about the Bruins lately with their pursuit of cap space, trade candidates, Bergeron, Krejci, and more. And look, it's not one to make you more optimistic about this offseason. I'll spoil it right there, because not only if you're a Matt Grzelcyk fan does it hurt, as he might be expected to be the first one as a cap casualty, we got a pretty damning paragraph about the future or potential future of Bergeron and Krejci on this team. He says Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci have yet to declare their plans for 2023-24. One teammate who requested anonymity because of his respect for Bergeron and Krejci told The Athletic he's not counting on either of them being back. And you told me, which I didn't even think of, that you think this anonymous teammate is Brad Marchand, and I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm sure all the players have respect for the two guys that have been there the longest, in Bergeron and Krejci, but like that was what just stood out to me is their whole respect thing. Was like he's been there just as long as they have, pretty much. And I feel like he would know too. Like if Bergeron, the first player Bergeron's going to reach out to, if he's going to, behind the scenes announce that he's probably done, I'd have to assume it's Marchand. So Marchand probably knows, but. Like, and then too, like who else on that team do you really think like you could not trust, but you get where I'm coming from? Yeah, like McAvoy's the only other one, maybe like Pasternak too. Yeah. But yeah, that to me just kind of screamed Marchand. I'm surprised. We talked about it right before we jumped on here. Like I think you and I are both in agreement that if we had to pick one of them, like Krejci, I think was the clear cut, kind of lost a step, or definitely lost a step at the end of last season. Really didn't provide anything for you down the stretch. If someone was going to go, you figured it'd be him. But I thought at least Bergeron. And again, maybe this isn't 100% true. We don't know yet. Of course, this is all just speculation, but like you think after how last year ended, he'd want to come back and give it at least one more kick at the can. You brought up the good point that, maybe he'll walk away as a Selke winner now. So maybe that'll sway him to, kind of stay away, but it is definitely interesting. The Grzelcyk thing too. Like, I think you've talked about it before. The writing was probably on the wall with him, sitting those games of the playoff stretch. I think that probably doesn't sit well with him. So he might be looking for a change of scenery there. I thought, as we'll get into a little later, like you said, there's a lot of Bruin stuff. The first move might be to move a certain goalie because of a contract extension that was handed out this week that we'll get into. But Grzelcyk, it does make sense. As you said to me right before we jumped on here, he's the easier of the guys to move and probably the more desirable for a team looking to get some sort of defensive help.
Absolutely. And like I told you before, that we've talked about before. If you're trading one of your left-handed defensemen that isn't Mike Riley, Matt Grzelcyk has much more value than Derek Forbort would.
Yep.
Not by like a ton, but definitely more of a coveted
Yeah, it can do
style
more help on
defenseman.
the power play. Like at that point, it comes down to do you value power play help or penalty kill help more? And I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of people would value the power play side of things more so than not.
Yeah, and Grzelcyk's just a great transition defender. My big thing for so long now has been, I've thought for a while Krejci's going to retire, or more likely of the two, and Bergeron would see that because I think Krejci's going to, hopefully make his decision first. That's what it sounded like after the season too, and it's been a long time.
That's what I was going to say too. After you're done,
my thing is, I'd be really shocked if Bergeron retired if Krejci retires, because that just leaves such a massive hole. And if that happened, it's because he absolutely has to.
Yeah.
Whether it's health, age, he's got another kid, his dad is sick.
That's
There's a lot
big
of
thing to
factors.
consider.
Whether it's any of those factors, you can obviously respect that. But man, it's going to be really surprising if Krejci goes, if Bergeron also goes. But as you mentioned, like, I have to imagine this anonymous teammate is Marchand. And I got to side with Marchand if that's the case here. Obviously, we don't know, but what a bombshell. Well, potential bombshell. Right now, in the moment it is, but it might not end up being down the road. But my God, pretty severe ramifications for the offseason if this ends up happening and both Bergeron and Krejci ride off after a first round exit. And just enough is enough. Like they just can't play anymore. And that would suck.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I think losing one of them and losing Krejci, that the easiest decision is to move Zacha into that spot. You bring Bergeron back for one more year and you're kind of all set. Like it's an easier move. But now, like you said, if you lose both of them, yeah, you still have the Zacha move to center to replace Krejci, but you have literally nothing probably for your first, like, unless you want to give one of the young guys a chance, but there's obviously huge questions there. Who steps up? I've seen people will say Coyle, but we've seen Coyle in that role before, and he just is not cut out to be a top line center, a great player, but he is what he is a third line center and does that role really well. So it almost kind of like, if this is true, again, we don't know. But you got to think if it's a player within the organization, like they're going to know more than we do, obviously. Like you said, it definitely creates a whole lot more questions, and it feels like it forces their hand to do something drastic almost, where you have to move again, like I said, kind of alluded to, maybe an Olmark for probably a top line center now or something along the lines of that. Like I said, we'll jump into trade stuff later on.
That's the tough thing. Nobody's given up a top line center for a goalie, even if they've won 40 games. The thing is, I think, I don't love Coyle in the top six if you can avoid it, but you could do a lot worse as your second line center. I imagine Zacha would go first line, then Charlie Coyle. And then I imagine, unless a guy like Georgi Merkulov really comes in and impresses, and they think of him as a center more so than a winger after a really good rookie season, I think Trent Frederic's your third line center.
Yeah, you bring him back. It'd be
we've seen him play both position, but he's thrived at center, mainly fourth line in the past. So maybe that's good for him, but I think a lot of the reason he thrived was from playing with Coyle. So maybe they want to keep that together.
Yeah, don't break that up.
I imagine that ups the ante of, I'll spoil one of our trade candidates they could go after in Elias Lindholm, because Calgary's going to want to extend him, but he also wants to know that they're going to be competitive. And he's looking for Horvat money, which is 8x68. I'm perfectly fine with giving him that. Maybe not the years as much, but you got to give to get.
Exactly.
And you can, structure out how the money is balanced out, front load it, and then, it's a little cheaper down the end in real cash. But man, that really throws a corkscrew in things. And, maybe your foot's to the fire in that regard. And Merkulov's that guy. You start him out in a third line role, like a guy that left after being a freshman stud at Ohio State, plays 1 year in the AHL, and then he's a third line center. Like, talk about an upwards trajectory in a fast manner.
That's for sure. Yep.
But yeah, other than that in the article, something else we expected. He noted that Clifton is set to walk. Makes a lot of sense. I saw Charlie O'Connor was projecting some options to the Flyers. He's the Flyers writer for The Athletic, and his projection, or the Athletics projection, I'm not sure what it was, for Clifton was 3 by 3.14 per year. The Bruins just can't do that.
No,
they've already got 13.6 million combined per year tied up in McAvoy and Carlo. Adding a just over $3 million defender is a lot to invest in your right side of your defense. And the right side of the defense is very commoditized these days, more so than the left side. So Clifton is going to get paid as expected. He's probably going to be gone. Nick Foligno will probably be gone. Orlov, Nosek, even though Orlov was training on Instagram in his Bruins stuff. But Garnet Hathaway might not quite be gone, because Elliot Friedman said today, I'm kind of surprised by this, that not only are the Bruins aggressively trying to keep Bertuzzi and blowing up the phone lines right now, trying to make moves with, this now tying into the Grizzly thing, like he could be the first one to go. They're also making a priority to potentially keep Garnet Hathaway. And that could be for a year, or that could be one of these typical 3 to 4 year cheaper money deals. You see like a Sean Corrali deal or a Curtis Lazard deal when he went to Vancouver. Can we see that for Garnet Hathaway? I like Garnet Hathaway, but I hope not. Because you're already strapped. You've moved on from fourth liners in the past, and the one time you kept a fourth liner for multiple years, it was Chris Wagner, who's been in the minors.
Who's rotting in Providence, yeah.
Yeah, and now a free agent. I don't like the sound of that. Hathaway was fine in the regular season, disappeared in the playoffs. I think he was playing hurt, too, after that cross-check from Kachuk.
Seemed like, yeah.
I don't like the idea of keeping Hathaway around. I think him and Orlov should be pure rentals, and you need to get younger on that fourth line.
Absolutely. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say that you got to give your young guys a chance at some point to see what you have. Like, I don't want to say that fourth line could be a revolving door this year of young guys, because that's just not sustainable. But like, you got to pick a couple of guys. And like, I was talking to my uncle down the Cape about this, and he kind of said that he's like, just make the whole fourth line, 3 of your better players from Providence, bring them up, see what you got. And, some of these young guys, because you're going to have to give them a chance at some point. So I think this year, when you have, severe question marks and strapped for cash, like, it would not be a wise decision to bring, a pure fourth liner back just to kind of have that role and be making up, money and taking roles away from guys. Like I said, you kind of have to figure out what you have in some of these young guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark McLaughlin amongst those young guys, will he step into a third line role? Will he get a chance maybe? But I think he's more of a fourth line guy. I don't see Tomas Nosek coming back. Those are really the main things. He talks about some of the other guys, like they brought in Lowry Poitras and extended Bussy, potentially a tandem of Swayman and Bussy and stuff like that. Lauco needs a bit of a raise. Frederick needs a bit of a raise, but a lot of the stuff is just status quo. But the big bombshell was definitely the biggest thing to note about the latest Bruins news we've gotten. But other than that, Brandon Bussy was given a 1-year contract extension. Your potential backup next year. Had a phenomenal year in Providence as a rookie, one of the best goalies in the whole league. That'd be a really nice cheap backup option. I love Ullmark, but if you're giving Swayman like $4 million, if he warrants that, you got $9 million tied up in your goalies versus like closer to $5 million if you have Swayman and Bussy. But like, I imagine you're in the same boat. But are you comfortable thrusting Bussy into that role?
Yeah, because I think you saw that Swayman can carry the boatload of the roles last year. He was good down the stretch, stuff like that. Like, and again, it comes down to you're going to have to crunch numbers at some point. Like, yeah, you don't want to get rid of Ullmark after, having such a great season, but he's going to have to, at least for me, like, it would be smart to make him one of the cap casualties. Because again, this kid was good for Providence last year. With 22 wins, was an all-star. I don't know how much people read into that when you're an AHL all-star, but it is worth mentioning. So he seemingly proves he can play the position. Like, the Bruins think obviously highly of him to have this contract offer given to him. I'm fine with it. He seems like money-wise, youth, age-wise, the perfect kind of backup to give. And two, you have to give Swayman the reins at some point. Like, you can't imagine he's gonna, want to sign a contract to be the backup for, however long his contract might be, and however long, if you do keep Ullmark, he's still around here for. So you gotta, like, I don't want to say pull the plug on that, but you know where I'm getting at. Like, at some point, you have to fully turn things over to Swayman to just kind of give him the comfort to say, you're our guy moving forward. Like, we have, all the chips on the table for you, that type of thing.
Yeah, and down there in Providence, they have Mikey DiPietro, who they traded for. They could bring back Kyle Keyser. DiPietro and Keyser are both RFAs, and they could even bring in Reed Dick, who they drafted last year. If they feel like he's ready. Tough name, but yeah, I don't know. We'll monitor that. It's very possible that Ullmark is traded if he waives his trade protection. So we'll monitor that if it comes about. Another interesting guy in the market is now Oliver Ekman Larson, who the Coyotes got fucked by in this deal because they retained salary on the original trade to Vancouver. And now that he's bought out by Vancouver, they lose a salary retention slot for the whole duration of that buyout, which is 8 years.
Oh, God.
So they got 2 for the next 8 years instead of 3. I imagine
That's
OEL is going to be looking for like a 1-year bounce back deal unless somebody's willing to give him term. I don't know if any teams really will. I don't know why they would. But that's a guy, if he bounces back on a cheap deal, 1 year, he could get paid next summer. The cap is projected to potentially jump 5 to 10 million next summer. If you're the Bruins, you can get him for like $1 million and play him on the third pairing to, kind of take some pressure off a guy like Zabor, who might have to step up. Mason Lohrei, you can let him marinate a little bit more. I think that's something worth monitoring. And Ekman Larson had interest in coming here back when the Coyotes were originally trying to trade him. So unless something's changed, he likes it here. And he's lost a step in his stride. But I believe this was Friedman as well, was talking about how he's really focusing on getting that speed back. Because, for a while in the NHL, he was one of the better skating defensemen in the league. But that just hasn't been the case in the last few years. And a multiple 20 goal scorer as a defenseman. So if you can get any production for him in a third line role for any team, maybe a team like Florida too, and then he bounces back, you're laughing. So I wonder if the Bruins explore this, and I wouldn't really hate them for doing it, especially because probably it sounds like at this point, Grzelcyk and Riley are the 2 left shot defensemen to move. And you might need that extra support. If you can fit it in, I don't see why you wouldn't. But it's going to be tough to make any outside additions with the strapped cap situation the Bruins have right now.
Yeah, you got to figure something out there. But I'm with you. I wouldn't hate that. I mean, like, it'd have to be, like you said, dirt cheap almost to make it work. But if you can pull it, and then too, you got to think, I mean, we don't expect the Bruins to be awful next season, but let's say they are, they do make this move and they are out of the playoffs by the trade deadline. Like, maybe not the worst piece to move, like just something to think of down the line, worst case scenario. But yeah, I'm with you. I would do this if it becomes available and you can get them at a very, very cheap price.
Yeah. Because I don't really see him breaking the bank for any team. The fourth period linked the Bruins to Kevin Hayes in their recent trade board. I think part of this is because, he played at Boston College, is from the area. But
Bruins love their local guys.
The Bruins do and might need a top 6 center. And the Flyers almost traded him to Columbus a couple weeks ago. Maybe the Bruins can get a third party or Philly to retain a good chunk of this and bring Kevin Hayes in. I like him as a BC guy. I have my complaints about him at times. He's not the best skater, and at times even his college career didn't really love playing defense, but he's a good player, and he finally was healthy for the first time last year. He missed 1 game after playing like 40, 50, 60 game seasons the last 3 seasons before. If you can get him at the right price, especially with Bergeron and Cratty both potentially retiring, you got to at least explore Kevin Hayes. Because
what would that price be, you think?
You might have to pay a little more for, depending on the salary retention, but I don't know, because they really don't have picks.
That's what I mean. You don't have a lot of picks to give up. So what exactly,
So is that a Matt Grzelcyk deal?
I was going to ask that. Is that a 1-for-1 type of swap thing? You throw some extra.
Is Matt Grzelcyk a part of that deal? Maybe you throw in. I imagine the Flyers would ask for a guy like Lysell in a deal like that, at least to see if they can get him.
Yeah, try to pry him free.
Your way down.
Yep.
Because you have to kind of be creative if you're the Flyers and talking to the Bruins here, because they don't have a lot of picks. So do they want a 2025 first? Does Don Sweeney want to just give it up, say fuck it at this point because they doesn't have his next 2? I don't know, but I think a Kevin Hayes deal can work. And the Flyers are trying to get another first. And if that involves a Kevin Hayes deal, they're out of luck. They're trying to get a third first-round pick, but maybe they're trying to get that third first-round pick in a Travis Konechny deal. We know the Detroit Red Wings are in the mix, and some other teams are certainly going to be in the mix on him. Do you have any additional thoughts on Kevin Hayes as a potential Bruin?
Not really. Like I kind of just alluded to, I'm very curious to see what a deal could even look like, just because, like you said, you don't have a lot of picks to throw out Philadelphia's way. So now you're talking players. And again, that falls back to which young guys could you maybe want to or have to give up in this type of deal, and isn't even worth it at that point. But it is an interesting point you bring up. Like you said, if both Krejci and Bergeron go, you're going to need a top 6 center. So
Yeah.
maybe it's something you explore at the right price. Right price you pull the trigger on, and just kind of hope it works out in the end.
Exactly. Milan Lucic has been granted permission to talk to teams. I know for a fact. Him and his wife both want to come back here. But now with this Bergeron and Krejci stuff, would he want to come back?
What do you
with all
want
his
to? Yeah.
buddies?
Yep.
Is Pasternak enough? Is Marchand enough? Maybe he just wants to be back because he loves the city, regardless. But Pierre LeBrun mentioned this as well. He talked to Lucic, and Lucic said, obviously, it's a special place for me and will always be a special place for me. But we've got 10, 11 days to see what happens before July 1st. We'll see what happens and then go from there. So Lucic just testing the waters, with this turmoil right now with the Bruins. I imagine he looks at a team like, I don't know, like Colorado, loses a top winger in Landeskog. This is a depth piece, not like a top 6 winger replacement, but just tries to go to a team where he can fill a void on the left side and potentially win a cup. But I don't know. I love the Lucic idea. I know he's slowed down, but he's a fan favorite. He's so fun to watch still, even though, he has slowed down. And I love him. So, if you can get him at $775K, fuck it. He's your veteran fourth liner like Foligno was, but better.
That's true. Yeah. I don't know. I'm torn about this one. I'm with you. I love Lucic when he was here originally, but it kind of goes back to what I just said about at some point you have to start filling some of these roster spots with some young guys just to see what you have. And that's
the drawback.
What's tough is again, yeah, Milan Lucic still has something to bring to the table. But again, you're taking away a roster spot. I was curious too. I went back and looked at that tweet because I wanted to see if it said a current Bruins teammate, just as one teammate. So maybe, current. I was throwing my conspiracy theory hat, and maybe it was Lucic was the one that had the comment. I'm like, oh, I checked in with the Bruins to see if it was worth coming there or not. And then I found out Bergeron and Krejci are both retiring. So now I'm kind of pushing off of wanting to come home and play. Just something to think about. If you don't want to throw any current Bruins players under the bus, maybe it's an outside former teammate that has this information.
It's possible, but man,
it would be fun though. Sorry to cut you off.
He would be an awesome mentor for guys like McLaughlin.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The thing I was going to say too. Yeah, that's another good one too. I mean, we saw Frederick grow and not be as much as of an idiot as he was a couple years ago. So, I mean, that would obviously help that along the lines too. To me though, too, it's this is a move you definitely make if you're going to suck this upcoming year and oh, we need something to get people, to come to the Garden and watch games. Let's bring Milan Lucic back because everyone loved him. That's obviously not where they are right now. They're not screaming for desperation or anything, but that's just something to keep in mind too. If things start to take a turn south, then maybe not that I'm saying the Bruins are going to pivot to just start selling everyone off, but maybe something to keep in mind. If the offseason doesn't go as maybe they want it to, maybe that's a name you look at just to kind of, grace things over a little bit, kind of like the Red Sox do when they make these little minor moves to make people happy.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, Lucic back, if you don't think that would be cool just from having him, you got to take the dump out of your pants.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Milan Lucic for what he did here. And if you don't, I think you're honestly crazy. My dad is kind of one of those people. So sorry, Dad. But
really? What's the reason for it?
He didn't hate Lucic, but I don't think he loved him at times back in the day. Maybe more so in his final years here. But I'd have to rehash that with him.
See, my uncle was on the Krejci side of that. He always was one of those people that was wicked overpaid for what he does.
Yeah, I was when I was really young too, because I thought he kind of coasted around at times. He did.
Yep.
But, when it counted, he didn't.
Exactly.
Next priorities: could they buy out Mike Riley? We've talked about it. I think it's very possible. I think it'd be smart. But if you can dump him, dump him. And maybe Mitchell Miller. Mitchell Miller is a much more complicated case. It's not just going to be a straight buyout. I'm not sure what the ramifications are. I don't think.
Oh, that's right. I forgot he's still under contract technically.
I wonder if there's a way that there could be some sort of not a grievance, but some sort of clause where the contract just gets voided. Because of the player, the situation. But I can't imagine Mitchell Miller is under contract for this team come the fall. So that's something to monitor.
I didn't really catch. To be honest, I muted my mic when the motorcycle drove by my house at 100, and I realized it would mute you too. So I didn't really catch the end of your comment there.
I just think it's something to monitor because I have a hard time seeing him on this team next year.
No, that'd be such a bad look.
To verbal meme, the Adam Silver meme. Mitchell Miller, get ready to learn Russian, buddy, because you're probably
Yeah.
going to the KHL. Because some KHL team will sign him because he's really good. He's a
Mhm.
really good prospect. He's a really good offensive defenseman. But the kid's a fucking maniac and
Yep.
doesn't really have great, social skills or ability
That's
to
for
show
sure.
remorse.
No.
As Mark Diver said on the Skate podcast about a month ago, WEI's hockey podcast, like he was like shocked at how Mitchell Miller carried himself, because he was one of the few people that talked to him that one day.
Mhm.
Miller was practicing, or at least on the Providence ice.
Mhm.
He was like, I'm shocked, like how this kid operates. Like, it's just bizarre. He just
He's a
doesn't get
psycho. Yeah.
it. Not even as much as psycho. He just like
Mhm.
doesn't have a good head on his shoulders.
Mhm.
But that could be a complicated situation. I'm not sure all the ramifications there. But back to Bruins we care about. One thing I forgot to mention with Tyler Bertuzzi, and Vladislav Gavrikov did this. He took a 2-year deal at more money than he probably should have made. Would this be the case with the Bruins, their cap space? No, maybe they just give him a bridge deal to give him an opportunity to cash out in a couple of years. I wonder if they can do a 2-year pact with Bertuzzi to make it work. And especially if Bergeron and Krejci are back, I don't really think he'd be interested if both of them retired,
Mhm.
unfortunately. But I don't think this will happen. But I wonder if they bring it up to him.
I didn't even think of it. I wonder just how much, now that this is out there in the world that these two might retire, how much that's going to affect guys wanting to come back. Like now, like all indications seem like obviously the Bruins are, like you said earlier, pushing hard, making every phone call, trying to get as much money as they could to bring Bertuzzi back. Now with this looming, does he even want, that's kind of where I'm at. Like now the doom and gloom starts to set in. Is all this effort going to be for not knowing that? That's why, I think too, I know it's a player that is inside, close with the team, but I can't, until it happens, I can't wrap my head around Bergeron retiring, especially like you said, if Krejci does, because that's going to put them in such a bad spot and put them at such a disadvantage in everything they do this offseason. So
and it's the centennial season too. Don't you think Bergeron would
didn't even
potentially
think
wanna
of
be
that
around
either.
for that?
You would think, yeah,
I don't know, but
that would be
we talked about, he's got tons of life factors.
Mhm.
So it's more complicated than it may think outside of his skill and
Absolutely.
ability still.
Yep.
But I don't know. I kind of wonder, because I think Bergeron and I hope Krejci will have the decision by July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
You got to hope you can get Elias Lindholm if they announce within the next week. And then you'd be like, hey, we lost Bergeron and Krejci, but we got a really good center for you to play with. You get to either play with Zucker or Elias Lindholm.
Mm-hmm.
Please stay. Somehow
That's
we'll
the thing that's
work.
worrisome too, though, is I forgot to say that, is how long this has taken. You mentioned that earlier too.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting to me that I totally forgot about that was mentioned in Fluto's article is until the day of the season starts or something around then, you can exceed the cap by 10%.
Okay, I did not know that.
So that gives the Bruins some leeway. I imagine they don't want to even use that because you lose leverage if you're trying to clear that space to get under the 10% overage, I guess is a good word for it here. But something to think about, because I feel like nobody really talks about that, and some people might not know that. So
I definitely didn't.
That's pretty interesting. Another center option, much less likely, I think, that was it's been speculated and was thrown out a potential proposal for this player, was the disgruntled Pierre-Luc Dubois. And I love the player. I don't love him at $9 million, but I love the player. If you can get him around 8.25 for 8 years, do it. The proposal was a 2025 first, 2023 third, and Mason Lohrei for Pierre-Luc Dubois. He's going to be signed and traded. He is 25, 26. I'm doing that trade. You don't have picks, first round picks in these upcoming years. He's 24. He'll be 25. When's his birthday? Let's see. Because I think I heard recently his birthday's in July. Oh, it's June 24th. So 3 days.
Couple days.
Birthday as my brother, besides a few years. He's gonna be 25, 8 years. You got to do that, especially if Bergeron and Krejci are gonna retire.
Yeah,
now.
that's the fit. Yep.
Do you want to give up another first round pick? No, but at the same time, this team,
you want to give up a
rebuild.
Yeah.
They're gonna want to contend, and if they lose Bergeron and Krejci, Jacobs is going to be down Don Sweeney's throat to get Elias Lindholm or Pierre-Luc Dubois.
You got to do something. Yep.
Absolutely.
If they start losing defensemen, does that change it? Like your defensive, like you trade Grizzly, you move Mike Riley, who's obviously, just kind of a piece. He's not going to be here long term. But you start losing some of these defensemen. Maybe they look to get out from Forbert. Like, does that change your mind about trading a defensive prospect, or are you just full on like
a little bit, but like a bona fide top 6 center for 8 years?
Yeah,
that hasn't even entered his
that outweighs
prime,
it. Yeah,
outweighs it. I would hate to give up low ride, but if you have to do it, I mean, the third round pick this year, they don't have a first or a second. Like, who gives a shit? Like, they just don't make picks this year. It's whatever.
Yep. Just throw this year away. You got nothing for prospects.
Core isn't going to be revolutionized by the draft this year with the lack of picks, unless they, trade Omar or Hall for some, a second or two the next week leading up to the draft. I do this trade. I do. I absolutely do.
I think, like you said, if both walk, you pretty much almost have to. Like, you have to do something. You can't go into next season, like we talked about, with Zacha as your, again, good players, but if you go into next season as Zacha as your de facto number 1 center and Coyle as your 2, like, you're going to be at a disadvantage unless you knock it out of the park with some of these minor free agent signings that they may or may not make.
Pierre-Luc Dubois is a perfect Bruins playoff center. If he's not in a situation like Columbus or Winnipeg and he's locked up, I don't think he's going to have any more of these issues of wanting out of these places. He wants to go to Montreal. That's easier said than done. If they can make it work financially, which I'm not sure they can, you have to make a trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois. But I'm not getting my hopes up because their cap situation is so convoluted this year. I don't think they could make it work. But if for some goddamn reason they can, they have to go after Pierre-Luc Dubois. And it's kind of the same thing with Lindholm. Like, it's not going to affect you this year because he's making less money, but you're going to have to give Lindholm an extension that's, hopefully going to be made easier by a huge cap jump. But you got to monitor these things. But Dubois is a lot harder to, envision because he is an RFA right now. You're giving him that $8+ million right away. So it's a fun thought. And I would do that trade in a heartbeat at this rate. But I don't know if it's going to happen, but it is an interesting thought.
Absolutely. Yep.
As we transition into more NHL stuff too, for anybody who didn't see, because it is ESPN Plus, not everybody has it. They did throw out some interesting trades in this article. One was Connor Hellebuck to the Los Angeles Kings for Blake Lizotte, Tobias Bjornfot, a second in this year's draft and a 2021 last year, 2024 first next year rather. That'd be a really interesting trade, pretty big blockbuster. Erik Karlsson to the Dallas Stars for a 2023 second, 2023 fourth. I imagine there'd be some salary retention here, but maybe not for reasons I'm going to explain in a second. Thomas Harley, who I love, Ayrton Martino, who's a prospect, and Roddick Foxa. Maybe that salary from Foxa offsets the money a little bit. That would be wild. Haskin and Carlson, Robertson, Hintz, freaking Pavelski, power play. Good luck. That would be fucking ridiculous. Evgeny Kuznetsov, who's another top 6 center option potentially for the Bruins at 25% retained, and Nick Jensen to the Hurricanes for Brett Pesce, Teuvo Teravainen in a 2024 second. The Red Wings and Hurricanes make a deal for DeBrincat to Detroit for Carter Mazer, a 2023 first, which is the New York Islanders Vancouver pick, at 2023 second. And then the last one was the Dubois trade. Actually, not the last one. The last one was Scheifele in the third in 2024 to Minnesota for Carson Lambos, the 21st pick, the 2024 second, and Freddie Gaudreau. So pretty spicy if you're into the whole hypothetical trades aspect of things. But yeah, I figured those were worth mentioning because it's off season, it's trade speculation season, and maybe not everybody saw that article. So pretty wild ones, I got to be honest. But on top of that, there's tons going on, tons going on in the NHL. Jesper Bratt stuck around in New Jersey, 8-year, $63 million, 6th round, $63 million, just like his jersey number. Sean Monahan stays for a bounce back deal in Montreal for just under $2 million. Buffalo keeps Zemgus Girgensons around for a year at 2.5, and Lucas Rushek for 2 years. That was a nice depth piece for them. Brett Pesce, who we just mentioned, could be on the move if he can't agree to an extension with the Hurricanes. Edmonton and Buffalo have already expressed interest. LA and Montreal, the leading suitors for Pierre-Luc Dubois, but they aren't the only landing spots. A sign and trade is likely. Like I said earlier, I think 9 million is crazy. Timo Meyer was looking for, I think, more than 9 million with San Jose, but it's going to arbitration. But there is belief he wants to sign long-term with New Jersey. That's going to be a tough one to iron out, I think. Alex DeBrincat, who was traded last year and we know wants to trade again, has given his list of teams a likely sign and trade that could happen before the draft. Has interest in Dallas, Nashville, Vegas. Don't see that happening. Their cap situation is hell. Detroit and Florida, according to Bruce Garrioch, who's a big Ottawa media guy. Detroit's also linked to Travis Konechny, as we said earlier. Any thoughts on any of these names?
Not really. I just find it funny that Alex DeBrincat, it seems like, is always in some sort of trade talk. Looks like the guy just cannot get out of that, which is, like I said, kind of funny.
It was a bad omen, and I mentioned this in a TikTok I made about it last year. It was kind of interesting that when they made that trade, there weren't any talks leading up to the trade of an extension. So it kind of felt like it
doesn't bode well. Yeah.
But
that seems like something you should nail
out
before you agree to make the trade with the, like, hey, this guy's a flight risk. We might want to kind of nail him down here and see.
Which is kind of weird that he wouldn't want to sign it with a team like Ottawa that's on the rise. But
that's, could be a star player in that offense. So that just team entirely.
Yeah, but what can you do? It sucks for them. They gave up a 1, a 2, and a 3 for him last year. The 1 being the 7th overall pick. Christ's sakes. Speaking of the New Jersey Devils, Connor Hellebuyck indicated that he would be willing to sign long term, but he's looking for Andre Vasilevsky money, which is $9.5 million a year. That is fucking bananas for a goalie.
Wild, yeah.
I would not pay that to any goalie.
No.
But that's going to complicate things, especially with Jesper Bratt's extension and Timo Meyer's impending extension. So good luck to New Jersey if they want to make that work. They're going to have to get that dollar to come down. Noah Hannafin, another Boston guy. We were talking about Kevin Hayes earlier. Will not be staying in Calgary long term, as may not Elias Lindholm. Tyler Toffoli could be on the move. Darren Dreger said he could be traded. Mikhail Backlund, although he wants to stay. Noah Hannafin will not stay long term. They're exploring trade options. Lots of interest in him. Patrick Nemeth and Zach Cassian were bought out by Arizona. And somewhat surprisingly, they're going to try and be more competitive. Makes sense to keep fans more invested as they're in turmoil. They have so many picks, so they're going to try and turn some of these picks into players, that are, solid enough to help them. But, some teams are trying to move for cap reasons. Maybe Taylor Hall reunion is one of those. I doubt it. Maybe they want Linus Ullmark. I doubt it, but they both have trade protection and probably wouldn't accept a trade to either of those teams. So just throwing it out for funsies. A name I'm looking at for them is Victor Arvidsson. LA needs to move cap, and I could see Victor Arvidsson being a Coyote in the next couple of weeks. O'Reilly in Toronto is not totally out of the question, as Brad Treliving is going to try to keep him around. Makes a lot of sense. He was a good fit there. He immediately kind of left the door open to that being a rental. The Winnipeg Jets might be buying out Blake Wheeler, but there is some trade interest. Makes a lot of sense. It's going to be so hard to trade an $8.25 million contract for like a 34-year-old player who's declining. Just buy him out. It's 2 years. Like, who cares? Just the guy hates your team. Just buy him out. Just buy him out.
The guy hates your team. He doesn't want to be there. He hates you. He hates everyone.
And especially, you have Dubois, Scheifele, and Hellebuyck that are way more tradable assets. Like, just cut bait with the one that's the hardest to trade. I think that makes the most sense.
That would make sense, yeah.
According to Chris Johnson, it looks like $1 million is going to be the official cap bump the NHL gets, as we expected, but that sucks. Elliot Friedman said on 32 Thoughts podcast today, he thinks Elias Lindholm and the Flames are talking. He said he believes that the Flames know that if they want to keep Lindholm, it's going to be Horvat money in that area, and that he wants to be assured that they're going to be competitive. Something could happen after the draft. So that's something to monitor, especially for the Bruins. Looks like Ivan Barbashev is hitting the market. Makes a lot of sense. He was amazing in the playoffs and is going to get paid, and Vegas just does not have money to give. The Hockey Hall of Fame 2023 class was announced. Henrik Lundqvist, Tom Barrasso, Pierre Turgeon, Mike Vernon, Caroline Ouellette, Ken Hitchcock, and Pierre Lacroix, who was inducted posthumously as he's no longer with us. Surprised to not see Datsuk here. Surprised to not see Alexander Mogilny, even though I think he's being blackballed because he's Russian in the political climate, amongst other reasons. But that sucks. I mean, I was talking to you earlier. Alex McGillney had fucking 76 goals in 77 games one year.
That stat you sent me was ridiculous. Like,
he was a purebred, ridiculous goal scorer. He like defected from Russia. Like, the guy has an incredible story and was one of the best pure goal scorers ever, in my opinion. Even though I didn't watch him play, of course. Some people might think I'm, crazy for saying that, but I think it's true. And yeah, we had here, Sweeney is blowing up the phone lines around the league, and he's interested in keeping Bertuzzi and Hathaway. And I said, they don't overextend for fourth liners.
Bait with Hathaway,
a little bit surprising. I hope it doesn't happen, because it would not be a good use of resources. To wrap up a huge hockey segment today, a bit of a yikes, depending on how you look at this. Bergeron said to Mark Stone that Vegas would win the cup if they hired Bruce Cassidy. What do we think about that?
I think, like, either I told you or I told my uncle, my grandfather this. Like, I don't know if there were people that still thought, Bergeron was one of those people that went to Don Sweeney after last season and said that, oh, this guy has to go. I think if there were people that were thinking that, this pretty much puts that all to bed. And I don't know. Like, I just find it funny. Like, the Bergeron knew what you had in the room. I've seen some people say, well, maybe, you just kind of fell into the trap of, Cassidy's a great coach, but the coaching style got a little old. I don't know. Like I said, for the spite reasons that I have rooted for since day one of the Bruins getting knocked out and Vegas still being there. Like, I find this hilarious, because I think it, again, just goes to show how, the soft mindset of this team, that, like, you choose to listen to, the players when they complain about the coach being a little too harsh, more so than the coach that seemingly knew what he was doing. Again, first year winning the new system, takes him all the way, wins the whole thing. So very funny, but also, like you said, pretty concerning, because that's, like you said, yikes, big yikes, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, that just shows how much confidence he had in Bruce, and tells me that at least partially he didn't want Bruce to go. And that's, something
that's the biggest takeaway for sure.
Happened. But I mean, it sucks for that to age very correctly. Like, even when Bergeron's making predictions, he's perfect.
Yeah.
It stinks, and it makes the Bruins look worse. So that happened about like 4 or 5 days ago, but definitely worth mentioning for anybody.
Oh, the timing wasn't great either. It's like, how long can you sit? Oh, let's hope Vegas wins. We can sit on this all season. Like, I don't know when you have to think Bergeron was asked obviously before the season started. So again, the timing, a couple days after they win the cup and have their parade, like that, this drops. So, like you said, does not make the Bruins look great in any way, shape, or form.
No, it does not. But there's a lot going on, and a lot more is going to go on. We'll get more into like prospect stuffs and my first round mock next week. Like football, I'll try to keep it as quick as possible. I think I broke a record for my mock drafts with the football one this year. Unfortunately, for anybody looking forward to it, I will not have an NBA mock draft later in the podcast today. So I know you're all disappointed about that.
Thank God there's stuff happening with the Celtics, because I was not going to try to come on here and lie about knowing who the Celtics should take with the 35th pick. Like, nope, we pretty much know who's going 1, 2, and 3 at this point. Other than that, the NBA draft is just a toss up. Like, I really don't pay too much attention to the NBA draft, because, it is what it is. Like,
exactly. It's definitely the least invested in the NBA draft I've been in a long time. But speaking of the NBA and the draft, before we get to draft stuff, we did have a big blockbuster trade drop in the league over the weekend. Bradley Beal was traded to the Suns to form a new big three in Phoenix.
Yep, as you said, he goes to the Suns along with a couple of young players, Jordan Goodwin and Isaiah Todd, to help the Suns figure out what they're going to do with depth, because I think they have now maybe 4, 5, or 6, it might be, guys under contract, so they have some things to iron out there. The return was the funniest part of this. Obviously, Bradley Beal is not what he used to be. He's a little bit on decline, health maybe a concern, but still a good player. He ends up going for Chris Paul, who may or may not get flipped elsewhere. There were talks of maybe the LA Clippers trying to get involved on him, but with this trade with the Celtics today potentially going down, I thought I saw a tweet that said that probably takes the Clippers out of the Chris Paul running if they get Malcolm Brogdon. It would make a lot of sense. They both play similar positions, and Brogdon's the better player at this point in his career, if you ask me. Landry Shamet, a depth guard for the Wizards. Good 3-point shooter there. Multiple second-round picks and multiple pick swaps. Again, Bradley Beal is not what he used to be, but to me, I don't know if you feel any differently. That's a laughable return. And everyone has said the same thing since this trade has happened. The Wizards screwed themselves. They should have traded him a couple years ago. I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago when he signed that
leverage too with the whole
exactly.
unique trade situation he had. He could just pick where he wanted to go and say,
Yep.
screw if you don't like it.
Oh yeah, it came down. I think I remember hearing it came down to them and not Phoenix, them in Miami, and they ended up choosing this one. I can't remember what Miami's offer was, if it even came out or not. But like, again, the Wizards look horrible in this. Like I said, I can't remember if it was 2 years ago or last year where Beal signed that extension. They should have moved him. It's the same problem I think that Portland's going to fall under, of not wanting to trade, or Damian Lillard not wanting to go anywhere. Like, if you're going to continue to be, mediocre, and in the Wizards case, just flat out stink, like, you have to bite the bullet, move some of these guys down, earlier than you did. And that's what it ends up being. Phoenix, like you said, they form a new big three with Durant, Booker, and Beal in really good shape. Of course, they have DeAndre Ayton as well. But they might have some problems again. They're over the cap, luxury tax, stuff like that. I think, like I said, they have 5 or 6 guys under contract, so they're going to have to try to figure out what they want to do with a roster crunch. DeAndre Ayton may or may not be moved, but like you said, this was definitely the biggest until today trade. Maybe still is the biggest trade, depending on how you look at Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Ayton is the logical guy to trade to help with that cap flexibility.
Yeah, he'd get you the most too.
And he's the next in our outline, as you have here, DeAndre. You are ... or aren't a Celtic. Yeah,
a lot of conflicting stuff with DeAndre Ayton over the last 24, 48 hours. Again, with the lack of roster depth, cap flexibility, and then, of course, acquiring Bradley Beal, there was some belief that maybe that DeAndre Ayton could be on the move to help with that flexibility and help give them some roster depth. Celtics may or may not be involved, depending on who you ask. This is from Mass Lives, Brian Robb, the other day. He said, quote, "The Celtics have no interest in Ayton, or in an Ayton deal Ayton deal per a league source due to the pricey contract. So any scenario that involves Brogdon going to Phoenix now is dead. Without the third team getting involved, Phoenix could involve moving Ayton elsewhere, but don't look to Boston to get involved unless Ayton's going to a different team." Then, of course, today,
Works
NBA
for me.
Exactly.
Don't want this fucking guy.
No, because
shit happening with him.
Exactly. I was a little worried when I saw NBA Insider today. Chris Haynes had the tweet that said the Phoenix Suns have spoken to the Boston Celtics about DeAndre Ayton. Then I saw a tweet that said the Celtics had spoken to Phoenix. I don't know if there was just some wording mishap there. I'm trying to figure out, who is talking to who exactly. I'd have to assume Phoenix was the one asking about the Celtics, because, like I said, Phoenix, if you're smart, you'd probably want to try to move that contract to help yourself out a little bit. I'm with you, though. I think we saw it on full display in the playoffs this year alone. If you didn't think DeAndre Ayton was soft, yes, he was going up against the best, big man in the league, and Nikola Jokic, but Nikola Jokic made him look like an absolute child. We've seen it before. When things get tough for DeAndre Ayton, he kind of folds. Good talent, should be better than he has been. Was decent this year, 67 games, 18 points per game, 10 rebounds, and just under 1 block per game. Has 3 years left on his contract, right around $100 million remaining on his current deal. But good that the Celtics seemingly passed on, as we'll get to the Porzingis stuff in a second. I, like you, was out on Ayton right from the start for all the reasons I just mentioned. Again, great talent, but a guy that has, shown to flake before and be soft in pretty big moments.
Yeah, it just seems like a head case attitude wise. And, sometimes his play, I feel like it sounds like it fluctuates as well.
Yep, absolutely.
A guy that you could make the similar case
is
for.
Gonna say, yeah, maybe to a lesser degree or more, depending on how you look at him.
Is the likely future Celtic, it seems, Kristaps Porzingis, with an opt-in and trade. I didn't realize Porzingis had such a good season last year, especially on the Wizards.
Yep, career highs in a lot of stats.
23.2 points. Shot almost 50% from the field and 40 from 3. I think you're getting him at a good time, and even if it's for 1 year, if he cashes out next year, if he actually comes here, this doesn't fall through, I think you're getting a guy that gives you options with your bigs, especially when you never know if Al Horford's going to be healthy as he's getting older and slowing down. Mm-hmm. Rob Williams gets hurt a lot.
Yep.
That gives you much more options if if not both of those guys are hurt. Or if it's vice versa, you can, work around multiple options with your bigs.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me. Like you said, you mentioned Rob Williams getting hurt. Porzingis isn't the healthiest guy either in his career. That's kind of been one of the biggest knocks on him since being drafted. So you're taking a big chance there. But to that, I also say you're trading a guy who was hurt last year and you saw fall off when he was injured. Brogdon, I haven't seen anything if he's getting surgery on his arm, if he even needs it or not, that tendon that he either ruptured or tore or whatever the, severity of it might have been. Yeah, but so you didn't really know how he was going to come back and if he was going to play. Gallinari, you're expected to lose him too because his $6.8 million salary is going to help close the gap on the salary matching threshold they're trying to go through. He's coming off a torn ACL. You never know how a guy's going to come back from that. Obviously, we were hoping that Gallinari would play this upcoming year, get to see him in a Celtics uniform because he was obviously very excited being a childhood Celtics fan. It stinks that he has to go, but I think this is a deal. I've kind of talked myself into this because I was not a huge Porzingis fan, as we talked earlier. The reasons you mentioned earlier about Ayton, similar kind of soft player, plays smaller than he is. He's 7'3", but he plays kind of like a guard at times. Not a true big man. On the flip side of that, though, this was an interesting Kevin O'Connor tweet talking about, just like you said, the growth that Porzingis has had this season, coming off a career high in points per game and field goal percentage. He said, quote, Kristaps Porzingis was fourth in points allowed per pick and roll, 0.93, first in top post scorers, 1.29, and fifth in points per closeout, 1.23 via second spectrum. Said, so KP shoots 40% on spot up threes, kills defenses when he attacks closeouts, can now post up with efficiency and is a good defender. Health will always be a concern, but he just had his best season of his career. This could be his prime. So like you said, you're getting a guy that you're selling pretty high on, or buying pretty high on rather, because of all the, career stats he set. He's made improvements to his game. Again, he was not a big post player in, his early career. I remember there was a game against the Celtics. Marcus Smart locked him up in the post, which like your 6'3" guard should not be doing against a 7'3" guy. So Porzingis has made, big strides in his career, but again, it isn't done yet. They're still trying to work out some of the kinks here and there of the deal. This was interesting for Mark Stein because a lot of people saw this potentially as a 1-year rental for Porzingis, but it is interesting. Mark Stein a couple hours ago said, quote, the 3-team deal to send Porzingis to Boston is likewise expected to lead to a July contract extension for Porzingis beyond next season's $36 million player option, league sources say. Today was the deadline to invoke the option. The deadline, I believe, was at 7:00. So that, of course, has come and passed. He's going to, it seems like, accept it because this deal would not go through if he didn't. Now it kind of muddies the waters on, what is the Celtics, book looks like next year down the line, with obviously the Jaylen Brown extension potentially coming down the line, as we'll get to in a second. What do you do with him? But as of right now, I really don't know how you can hate this deal. Like, you're getting an upgrade over Gallinari, you're getting an upgrade over Brogdon. Brogdon was seen as having a 1-year rental guy or a 2-year maybe rental guy. Wasn't healthy down the stretch, didn't play well even when he was healthy down the stretch. Like, you're trading ultimately the guy that won sixth man for a guy that's probably going to be your starting power forward, starting center this season. I don't know how people can, dislike that deal. I think it maybe comes down to if you like Porzingis as the player or not, but this is definitely a big increase for this team. And it gives you, a big man that has some inside scoring. Like Rob Williams, as we know, is not an offensive threat for the most part outside of lobs. Al Horford took a big step down last year. You got to think that is, attribute that to age. Porzingis, gives you the size of Rob Williams and the scoring ability that Al Horford used to have. So, and then of course the outside shot as well. So I think it's a positive deal, a good start. Obviously the first player move that Brad Stevens makes of the offseason. Of course, the Celtics' big moves are coming in the coaching, behind the bench, which we'll get to in a second. They made a couple more moves, but this is a positive for me. Like I said, I've talked myself into liking the player and the thought of him being in this offense because it gives you a definite number 3 option too, behind Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
Yeah, besides the injury stuff, potentially, like, I like it. I don't know how I feel about a long-term extension yet, but if they do it, they do it. It seems like that is in the cards, but yeah, I mean, it's a good player. It's an upgrade. And like I said, it's, it helps you with your bigs, gives you more options. But the ghost of Leroy sent.
Yeah, this was quite a scare this morning for people who know.
It doesn't really make sense because if they were to do this, Brown would, if I'm not mistaken, would have to not take the Supermax and somehow sign and trade otherwise.
Correct. The tweet,
but
people don't,
it was worth monitoring because PFT tweets through the ghost of his dog. PFT knows a lot of people in these industries. He's been right before.
They sit on Felger and Maz. They looked at it.
It was like, oh my God, this guy actually happened. Like, he doesn't just throw shit out unless he's trying to fuck with Celtics fans, which is certainly possible. So yeah, reasonably sent people into the tailspin. But people were like, yeah, this doesn't really make sense because he's still under contract.
Yep.
But it was wild.
They said on Felger and Maz, they looked it up. Apparently, the Ghost of Leroy Twitter account is right on like a 70% clip when it comes to the news that they break. It broke the Aaron Rodgers news, so obviously, like you said, PFT commenter is not pretty close, but close with Aaron Rodgers enough to know that when that news is going to break. But in case people missed the tweet you were referring to earlier today was, quote, hearing Jaylen Brown will leave the Boston Celtics via a sign and trade, and of course, bark, bark, bark to follow. But Keith Smith, who does a lot of the spot track stuff and kind of breaks down the NBA numbers and everything, kind of threw cold water on that earlier tweet following that up. Said, quote, Jaylen Brown is not a free agent. There will be no sign and trade with him this summer. He could do an extend and trade, but there's no reason to. If he turns down the super max, he can get traded and re-signed as a free agent in 2024 for more money. Also followed that tweet up with, if JB signs the super max, he can't be traded for a year. He can't sign the super max with anyone but Boston, even in an extended trade. An extended trade would allow him to add years onto the deal. Started about $38.2 million in 2024, 2025. That's about $4.7 million under the max of $42.9 million that he can get. I thought I was listening again to Felger and Maz today, and Jimmy Stewart brought up a thing where if they want to trade him, I can't remember how he worded it exactly, but it was basically like he can sign a 2-year extension. For it gets complicated with all the NBA terms and contracts and stuff. But the Celtics can't pay him something like 5% less than it's the tax, something weird. So again, it's not even worth going into. It's not happening. This is going to be one of the few times that the Ghost of Leroy, fortunately, is wrong. Looks like Jaylen Brown is here to stay, at least for now. But again, with the Porzingis stuff, if they aren't able to get an extension done, or if they do, maybe he's Jaylen Brown's replacement down the line. We're not going to think of that, though. We're going to celebrate that the Celtics have added a third big piece. The other thing that was interesting about Jaylen Brown, again, going back to Felger and Maz's producer, Jimmy Stewart, because we've talked about him before and the inside sources that he has, there was some rumblings, according to him, that the Celtics could be trading Brown to Detroit for the number 5 overall pick in tomorrow night's draft, Cade Cunningham and Isaiah Stewart. You and I talked about this off air. Cade Cunningham, not the greatest offensive player, but definitely a young, dynamic, former number 1 overall pick. Isaiah Stewart would be the big man that the Celtics could use off the bench if this Porzingis deal weren't to go through. But again, all indications seem like it's going to. This, to me, seems like more of a pipe dream than anything else. But if it were ever to come, to fruition and to be, I kind of think the Celtics would be dumb to pass this up.
Yeah, they could do a lot worse.
Absolutely. Again, the number 5 pick is not the flashiest when, of course, Jaylen Brown was the number 3 pick. And again, after I said the top 3 picks that you kind of know who they're going to be tomorrow night, it gets a little murky there. You don't really know who's going to go where. Obviously, the Celtics would have to like somebody at 5 if they want to make that move. But you're getting a good young piece in Cunningham. Again, a good young piece in Stewart and the number 5 overall pick. You get a rookie you can mold.
Yeah.
Not, like you said, not the worst thing you could do.
Yeah, it's really not terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is Grant Williams. This does not involve the 10th pick, but a sign and trade could be in the works between the Mavericks and the Celtics with Grant Williams.
Yep, and this all depends on. Yeah, it's going to have to happen because he is going to be one of the casualties of the Porzingis trade. A lot of tweets. Everyone was tweeting today, so I'll run through the timeline. This was from The Athletics, a quote, the Mavs have spoken to the Celtics about a sign and trade for Grant Williams. Boston Sports Quote on Sunday said the Celtics are exploring using Grant Williams in a sign and trade, according to the Ringer NBA. Indiana, Orlando, and Dallas have all shown interest in Williams, according to Michael Scotto. And then this was from Adam Himmelsbach earlier today, saying, according to multiple league sources, the completion of the Porzingis deal would likely mean that Grant Williams' time in Boston has come to an end. Like I said, the casualty of the move, you kind of, Porzingis not takes his role, because again, I think he's going to start, but then you move Al Horford to the bench, most likely. Al Horford probably takes Grant Williams' role. You're loaded in the front court now. He's going to be the guy that has to go. I saw a tweet that said maybe if you send him to Dallas, you could get Tim Hardaway Jr., which you moved a guard out in Malcolm Brogdon. Do you really want to bring a guard back in Tim Hardaway Jr., who's 31 years old? It's interesting to look at. He's definitely a guy I would shop. But again, it has to come down to, who can match your salaries, what do you want to, what can you offer Grant Williams, stuff like that. But you and I think are on different kind of ends of the spectrum when it comes to Grant Williams. I was, not maybe as down on him as you were after the whole Miami stuff. Good little player for the Celtics. But again, if this is a guy you have to move to get Porzingis in here, it's an upgrade and you got to be fine with it.
Too much money. Get him out of here. See you later.
Exactly. Yep.
Goodbye. Get Peyton Pritchard out of here too.
See, I think with Brogdon going, we talked about this too off air. I think Pritchard's probably here to stay now. You need a backup point guard, and he slots into that. Unless maybe you move Grant Williams for a backup point guard. Then you look to, maybe trade Pritchard for some draft capital or vice versa. I think Pritchard might be here to stay. I sent you that tweet that, so I can't remember who had it, that was like Peyton Pritchard went to management and was like, it's either me or him, and was able to get the reigning sixth man of the year out of Boston. So if that's how it went down, I doubt it.
It's a joke. It's just a joke.
I know. Yeah, I'm saying, but kudos to Peyton Pritchard if there was ever an inkling that maybe that happened. But no, I think on a more less joking, I think Pritchard's probably here to stay now with the departure of Malcolm Brogdon, because it makes sense. Like, do you go with him as your backup point guard, or do you try to thrust, I think, is it PJ Davidson or whoever the backup?
I would much rather see JD Davidson than Peyton.
JD Davidson, right.
Way more.
All right.
On the coaching front, more additions to the staff. Former Celtics guard Phil Pressey. Some may fondly remember, some may not. I don't really remember Phil Pressey that much. Just remember the name.
Nice little backup guard, but
are joining Celtic staff. Jefferson being a friend of Tatum's.
Yep.
Just filling out that staff. Works for me. Guys, again, like we've talked about with Cassell and who is the other guy? Lee.
Charles Lee. Yep.
I haven't heard anything to really dislike about their basketball abilities as coaches. So cool with me on these additions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you could hate either one of them, because again, you're not going to knock a coaching decision too much unless it's like a head coach and you just don't think he's a good fit for the team. The Pressey one was interesting to me because I didn't even know if he was had any coaching background. Couldn't really find anything on it when I looked on Twitter or anything. So that might just be a former Celtic coming back, getting a job from Brad Stevens. The Jefferson one is more interesting because of the reason you mentioned. Did play with Jason Tatum at Duke, won a national title at Duke in 2015, played a couple of games with the Celtics in 2020, and like you mentioned, is a close friend of Jason Tatum. So that's led some people to think, the Celtics might be trying to do what, most teams do with their superstar and bring guys in that they want. So maybe this was more of a Tatum hire than anything else. If they asked him, hey, who's a guy that's on your radar? This is from Stadium basketball analyst Jeff Goodman, who's formerly of ESPN, CBS, and Fox. Labeled Jefferson as a, quote, rising star in the coaching business. So that's a positive there. Again, I haven't seen anything that says this guy is not cut out for the job or anything like that. But again, you don't know a ton about any of these assistant coaches coming in. From all, it seems like it's a good hire. And again, if Tatum's fine with it, I think that's probably the right direction to go, is try to get some guys in that Tatum either wants to play with or, wants to have coach him, because that is the NBA. You'd like to appease your superstars. And that's a move that I think makes a lot of sense for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Works for me.
Mm-hmm.
You have some other notes about a few not opt-outs, but declining player options and some guys hitting the market.
Yeah, a lot of these guys, the decision was today, kind of the same thing as Porzingis. 7:00 was the deadline. We learned the other day, Bruce Brown of the NBA, the champion NBA Nuggets, Denver Nuggets, he declined a 6.8 player option. Woj reported today that Denver is, quote, very likely to lose Brown in free agency, which is not fun, kind of funny, because Karl Malone, if you watch the parade, was talking very highly of Bruce Brown, hyping him up, and now Bruce Brown potentially might leave Denver, go elsewhere. Great player, can start, can come off the bench. The Celtics probably can't make it work money wise, but I think he'd be a really good fit here if you could somehow make that work. Is one of your new sixth man to come off the bench, but again, probably not going to happen. Little surprising, depending on how you look at him. Warriors, Draymond Green declined his $27.5 million player option. I have no idea where he thinks he's going to get that type of money from another team. If he thinks that, or maybe he just wants to change the scenery from Golden State. Of course, if you're on Twitter, you've seen that he's been hanging out with LeBron, it seems like, all weekend. So a lot of people seem to think he's going to end up with the LA Lakers. Any thoughts on either one of these two guys, or maybe Draymond Green and his kind of antics so far?
Yeah, I mean, Draymond Green's going to go to the Lakers. I think that's clear.
Mm-hmm.
Fred VanVleet, I imagine, going to have a lot of options. Kyle Kuzma looking for $30 million, as you have listed here, is pretty hilarious.
Psycho behavior, yep. VanVleet could probably get it, because that was the thing about him, is he's probably going to is expected to command 30 plus per year in free agency. Good, solid point guard, can score, can run the floor, good on defense. That makes a lot of sense. Kuzma getting 30 million that he wants, no chance that happens, because he is not, and he's a good player, but he is not $30 million a year good.
No, that's freaking bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
But Bruce Brown, I mean, I like the idea of Bruce Brown. He's a local guy too.
That's true. Yep. If you want to take the Bruins approach and sign a local guy, like maybe that, again, he's going to want more money, obviously, than 6.8. I don't think the Celtics are going to be able to offer him that. But maybe you approach him and you're like, hey, you could play for the hometown team if you want to take a super hometown discount. We need some people to fill out this bench that we've not blown up, but you know what I mean? Like, could use a couple extra pieces here or there. And then some minor ones. Montrezl Harrell declined his 2.7 from the 76ers. Bulls forward Derek Jones Jr. declined his 3.3 player option. And then Toronto's guard, Gary Trent Jr. Toronto might be heading for a rebuild. He accepted, excuse me. So he's going to stay. Maybe he's the replacement for Van Fleet, who is most likely gone there.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned like the local guys approach, because when I read Corey Proman's full 7-round NHL mock draft today, I was like, okay, who of these Bruins picks are future college guys? And 2 of the 5 picks they had were.
BC, BU.
One's going to Northeastern, one's going to Providence. So to see those guys being Bruins, but like I said, we'll talk about that stuff next week. But, maybe the Celtics take the local approach and add a guy like Bruce Brown. But right now they have bigger financial priorities on their minds. We did have a trade today outside of the Celtics. The Nuggets and the Pacers swapped some picks. The Nuggets will get 29 and 32 for pick 40 and a 2024 first.
Yep, nothing too crazy there. Just again, thought it was worth noting in case people missed it. And then some other player and just overall draft news that dropped today and over the weekend, over the first couple of days of the week. Like I said earlier, surprising maybe, but Damian Lillard just loves riding the loyalty part of the league, which makes no sense to me at this point. Like I'll give him credit there, but at what point do you just say enough is enough? He is reportedly staying put in Portland, saying, quote, the Blazers, this is from Adrian Wojnarowski saying, quote, the Blazers have shut down all trade calls on Damian Lillard, so he is not available. Miami strikes out on both Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal, which you hate to see.
Chris Paul go to Miami?
He might be able to. I wouldn't see if he gets bought. I mean, he could obviously still get traded by Washington. I don't know what the situation there is. If he's looking to get traded, if you're looking to buy him out, or what the deal is.
Trade for him.
I can't imagine any, unless you're trading like a late second round pick. Yeah, I can't imagine his trade value is all that high.
Yeah,
but yeah. You were shaking your head when I said the loyalty thing. Any thoughts on Damian Lillard still sticking with Portland?
No, yeah, he just it goes back and forth every offseason on him. It's like, oh, he's finally gonna get traded, but no, he wants to stay loyal. Like it just was back and forth. I've been talking about this with my coworkers. Like he's just gonna do this every year until something finally changes, if it does. But God, guy just needs to get out of there.
Oh, he is high on a certain draft pick.
Third pick. Yeah.
As we'll get to in a second, that maybe could spell brighter days in Portland coming up. Bulls guard Zach LaVine, who has found himself in maybe some trade rumors, could get dealt from the Bulls if they were to receive, quote, a good young player, multiple first round picks and salary filler if they decide to trade him, per KC Johnson, who's a Bulls insider, writes for the Bulls. I saw some people maybe float the idea of Zach LaVine, Jaylen Brown, that type of package. I wouldn't hate Zach LaVine. He's a good player, shoots a three, tough little player. You are maybe on the opposite side of that.
No, Zach LaVine gets hurt all the time.
That's true too. I'm also not too high on giving up multiple first round picks for him. The ability is there when he's healthy, as you said. The skill is definitely there, but that's definitely
so does Porzingis.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like one of the narratives I've heard about Zach LaVine too is he's not a good playoff performer. Is that true as well?
It's hit or miss. He'll have games where he'll come out and drop 40, and then the next game drop 15. So that would fit with the Celtics bill.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But that's a deal you make if okay, now you again, the shake-up talk, something has to change. You have to make some sort of drastic move. Trading Brown for Zach LaVine would be that drastic move, but we're definitely not there yet. Give it one more year, see if you can, again, kick the can down the road a little further. This was an interesting one because this was not the superstar I would be trading if I was the Clippers looking to trade. But Paul George could be dealt from LA. As, quote, the Clippers are gauging his trade value and are giving real consideration to the idea of disassembling the Kawhi Leonard-Paul George tandem, per Mark Stein. Kawhi Leonard, as I mentioned, is the guy I would be looking to move. I don't know how much you could get for a guy that is always hurt or, not really playing any other night because of the load management stuff. Any thoughts on the interest of Paul George, or just kind of feel like the Clippers might be just testing the water there to see what they can get for him?
I guess I'm a little bit surprised, but I don't know, with Brandon Miller thinking he's the GOAT, maybe the Charlotte Hornets should trade for Paul George.
Maybe.
Reunite him with his boy.
That was a wild comment.
It's also wild to me, segueing into the Brandon Miller stuff, how Michael Jordan still seemingly has a lot of say in things, which makes sense to an extent, but he's
Mhm.
selling his share of the team.
Yeah,
as
I
far as
was
I know.
wondering the same exact thing earlier. I'm like, all right, that's cool because I saw that. I'm sure you saw the same tweet that he's going to factor into who they take in the first round tomorrow night. Which again, like you sold your part of the team. I don't know why you would have that, but it is Michael Jordan, so maybe you have that luxury of being the best basketball player to ever play it. But talking about the Hornets and talking about Brandon Miller, the note on him was he has, quote, solidified his standing as the Hornets' second overall pick per Adrian Wojnarowski. Miller impressed Michael Jordan and company during his second private workout yesterday, and Charlotte reportedly prefers his fit alongside LaMelo Ball over Scoot Henderson. I've seen a lot of people say Scoot Henderson is probably the better player, but anytime he came up in, potentially the number 2 overall pick to the Hornets, it just didn't make sense because you have LaMelo Ball. Like, I get Henderson's a dynamic player, could probably play shooting guard, or you could probably go positionless and have the both of them out there in the backcourt, but you probably want LaMelo Ball as your primary ball handler. That's his skill. That's where he is best at. So getting a guy in Miller to play alongside him would make more sense to me, at least.
I suppose.
Yep. And then on Scoot Henderson, the last kind of note of the NBA, as we talked about with Portland, he and Damian Lillard have reportedly been communicating regularly per Mark Stein. It seems to think that he is probably going to end up going number 3 to Portland. So Damian Lillard will have, a nice little piece to build around there in Scoot Henderson, unless they maybe trade him. I saw maybe talk of trading that 3rd pick to New Orleans, maybe getting Zion. His name has come up in trade talks and, all other reasons that we won't go into. That's none of our business. And I don't really care all that much. But yeah, like I said, the NBA draft, I'm not going to talk about it too much outside of those 2 picks. I think we all know consensusly who's going to go number 1. And I don't really, care to spend that too long on who the Celtics might take at 35, because who knows if they'll make the pick. Maybe they'll trade it. Maybe there'll be a Nikola Jokic situation where it's a Taco Bell commercial going on. Well, the pick is made anyway, so who knows?
Yeah, that would be great. That means the Celtics would have a star.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair to Dame, they are starting to build something, I guess, in Portland. You get Scoot, you have Damian Lillard. Nurkic is a good player. Anthony Simons is a good player.
Yep.
I don't know who the fuck else they have, but that's
Exactly.
something. At least, like, he's clearly got a lot of loyalty. He's clearly got a lot of faith. So we'll
True.
see if it works out for him. I just don't know if it will.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you have any other basketball thoughts, we'll get to what we were originally going to start with, but we flipped the script here.
No, nothing. I was
just
looking on Twitter to see if there was anything official yet about Porzingis, but nothing has come down yet. So again, I got to assume they're still trying to figure out the numbers and who may be going where, along with Marcus Morris, I think, going to Washington. It was part of that 3-team deal. So if anything drops, I will alert you. But on to football as we go for the biggest idiot of the week, who's going to be our moment of the week.
Allegedly idiot.
Yeah, allegedly. That's right. We can't speculate anything, but I'll defer to you. You want to give your thoughts, or do you want to jump into the moment of the week? That was more so about his district defense attorney than Jack Jones, but we'll start there.
Essentially, moment of the week is football. It just segues into one of our biggest topics, which was his defense attorney, being Jack Jones's, Rosemary C. Scapicchio.
Roz from Monsters Incorporated.
Or Ursula.
That was a good one. Yep.
The way she handled this, and I understand to an extent why she did, was extremely bizarre to me.
A little over the top, don't you think?
It was over the top. It was aggressive towards the media without any specific examples of these accusations she was making from people, maybe people in the crowd. I haven't been looking around to see if anybody's calling him a thug or being racist to Jack Jones, which is the wrong way to look at it. But man, she laid the fuck into these people, and
like right away too. There was no grace period.
I have not seen anything like this. It was crazy, and you get the look on Jack Jones's face, like he's either like just shutting his mouth just because, or he's like, did I get the wrong person here? Or,
she had to have told him beforehand.
Does he agree? Like, is he just like ho hum because like, yeah, she's my attorney. Like, she's saying what she wants to say, and she's the expert on legal proceedings. I don't know what was going through his mind, but I would at least, if I'm him, be a little bit shocked by like how aggressive she was, which is fair. Because, some people are criticizing him for the wrong reasons and jumping to conclusions. But
Mhm.
I have never seen a defense attorney, lawyer, whatever, outside of a courthouse do what she did. It was crazy.
Mhm.
She went in on these people, did not provide any specific examples of these tweets and people on social media. And it was crazy. It was
Mhm.
absolutely crazy. And, this isn't to say her claims about, institutional racism in our world and
Just gonna
things like
say,
that,
yep.
that she mentioned a lot
She's
aren't
right
true, because
there.
they
Yep.
absolutely are.
Mhm.
But
In this
I
case,
think
though,
the
that
way
does
she
not
did this was
apply.
kind of
Like,
bizarre. It
yeah,
does in some ways, but in other ways it doesn't.
mhm.
It was a really unexpected angle to an extent for me to see from her.
Yeah, and I
And
mean,
it,
like
it, it blew me away. It blew me away. I've never seen anything like it. Which power
yeah,
to her, if she feels
absolutely.
that strongly, she has to defend her client. That's what she's getting
Mhm.
paid to do. And that's her profession. But like it was so shocking to me. I
All
was
things
like
I've
legit
seen,
silent watching it, just like
it was uncomfortable to watch at times.
it
Like I
was
texted you,
very
I'm like the
uncomfortable to
the
watch.
amount of times, and again, like if you said everything that I was going to, like you said about she's right with the systemic racism and everything like that. And like I said, I don't know if that necessarily applies when your client is openly bringing a gun to an airport allegedly. Like it's the amount of times she mentioned like just either the term thug or wannabe gang member, and just again throwing like the black male stuff out there, which again, like you're gonna defend your client how you want to defend him, and the angles you want to take on it. I get where she's coming from. But unless I was looking at the wrong stuff on Twitter, I didn't see more of it was this guy's an idiot for bringing a loaded gun to it. No one was calling him a thug at the time it happened, or a wannabe gang member, like maybe some people were saying about Ja Morant. Two totally different situations for what they did with guns. But yeah, I was with you. Like it was just completely. I told you my favorite part of the whole thing is when she came out, and I don't know who the reporter was that asked her, like, okay, so what do you have to say about the fact that they found the guns with his name on it in the bag? And she was like, yeah, they found the guns with his name on it. What about it? It's like it
Well,
didn't. Yeah,
well,
exactly. And then she
they are
again just
guns in an airport.
yep, exactly. They're loaded guns in an airport, and that'll lead into just because I don't have any other thoughts on just the woman of the week stuff, other than that his defense attorney was just insane way of going about it.
Look,
Again, I get where she's coming from because she's trying to do her job. But day one, hours in, just flying off the handle does not set a good
yeah.
tone right out of the gate.
And the next step here in court is August 18th, so that's the next date.
Mm-hmm.
It's reasonable to say or to suspect hearing this that like he could have been treated as a terror threat at an airport with
Absolutely,
guns.
absolutely.
Like it's logical for people to, with his past, I'm not saying for the race related reasons, like
Mm-hmm.
he's had some run-ins with the
He's
law
had
and been
problems
kicked out
before, yeah.
kicked out of school. Like calling him a thug isn't the right word, but
Mm-hmm.
painting him in that sort of light isn't the craziest thing.
No, there is a history to
Like
go
he's
off
not
of.
this
Like,
he's not this bill of morality.
mm-hmm.
And sure, a lot of this is alleged right now. We don't know all the details, but like for people to paint him in like a criminal light isn't totally crazy. He's had run-ins with the law multiple times for years that affected his draft stock. A guy that could have got a lot
Yeah,
higher
it's the
than
reason why he's here right
121.
now.
Yeah. Like it was just a really bizarre situation.
Mm-hmm.
And look, in the end, I hope this is like an accident. What happened? How these guns somehow ended up in his bag, whatever, and he can stick around. But I really don't see that happening. And I don't know how they keep him around.
I just
really
don't get how, like, and again, like you said, everything's all legend, so we're going off what we know here. But like, I don't see how that argument. They're going to use it. They're going to try to use it. I don't see how that argument holds up. It's like you don't. I had this discussion with multiple people. It's like we've obviously traveled to the airport. You don't not know what you put in your carry-on bag. Like if this was put like in the bag that you give to customs before you get on the plane, like that's a different story. But the fact that you brought 2 loaded guns in your carry-on onto the plane, like you know what you were doing. Like it's not like
that. Like
yeah, it's not like those just oh crap, I brought this on with me and these 2 guns just happened to appear. Like no, you not purpose. I don't know, maybe not purposely, but like you get what I'm getting at here. Like you had to have had some sort of indication or knowledge that these are with me. It's the whole thing just doesn't make sense. Like you said, like it sucks, but this is where we're at because of the history he's had And like you mentioned, this is the reason he's here right now, is he fell
Yep.
on the draft board because of these problems that he's had before.
Yeah. Per Massachusetts State Police, he was charged with 2 counts of possession of a concealed weapon in a secure area of an airport. Luckily, he cooperated with the police, which is always good to hear in a
Yeah, that could have
situation
been
like
way
this.
worse if
Possession of ammunition without a firearm identification card. Yikes. Unlawful possession of a firearm, carrying a loaded firearm, and possession of a large capacity feeding device, which carries 2.5 years in prison. Same for the Patriots. Said, we have been notified that Jack Jones was arrested at Logan Airport earlier today. We are in the process of gathering more information. We'll not be commenting further at this time. Anything else you want to add here as we talk about the legal stuff?
No, I was just gonna add, because I meant to look everything up, just what because obviously there's been a lot of talk about how big of trouble he could be in. That's what we're getting. At least I was gonna plan on getting into with Michael McCann stuff. The law expert. But looking it up, just kind of, if people didn't know or don't know the laws, what Jack Jones could be facing. If he is convicted of all this stuff, found guilty of having all this stuff, possession of a concealed weapon in a secure area of an airport serves up to 5 to 10 years in prison on a $10,000 fine if convicted on both accounts. Possession of ammunition without an FIC, up to 4 years and $1,000 fine if convicted of both accounts. Unlawful possession of a firearm is up to 4 years and $1,000 fine. Carrying a loaded firearm, up to 5 years if convicted of both accounts. And then the possession of a large capacity feeding device, that actually serves up to 2 to 20 years, somewhere in between there. I'd love to know how they figured that out, the total of years, and then a fine between $2,000 and $20,000. So he is in quite a lot of bit of trouble if these all come to be. And according to, like I said, sports law expert Michael McCann, who was on NBC Sports Boston, Boston Sports Tonight, talking about it. This was the comment he had on Jack Jones. He said, Jones is in a lot of trouble. He's in a lot of trouble because he's charged with multiple offenses, and they're serious offenses. What we know so far is that he's facing serious charges that carry potentially time in prison. I think that's something that has to be really worrisome, and beyond how this will affect his career with the Patriots and his eligibility to play in the NFL. He also went on to say the problem here is just the type of firearms that he allegedly bought on, and the alleged fact that they were loaded. There's all sorts of characteristics to this that make it worse than some of the other situations that the NFL players have faced. So not a great picture there. Obviously, like he said, there's been players that have done it before. I think the one that you can kind of attribute it to the most was the Quinnen Williams situation with the Jets, where he was arrested for criminal possession of weapons in March when trying to board a flight in LaGuardia Airport. A little bit of research on him for people that didn't know or what happened there. He had a permit for the handgun, but not the correct paperwork for it in New York. It didn't cover multiple states, and he took a plea deal, which saw the charges dropped and switched to a disorderly conduct, which is a violation in New York, not a crime. So a little similar, a little different. Quinnen Williams obviously was able to get off with what he did for the most part. Different situation than what Jack Jones is dealing with for all of the problems, as you mentioned, all the things that he was brought up with the multiple counts for.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and I'm not a legal expert, but I really find it hard to find a situation where he doesn't get like jail time here. Like at least a little bit.
Again, we're not going to go into the politics of anything with the Massachusetts gun laws, but
one thing too, but like that also mentioned 30 years. I don't know if he's going to get that.
I saw that.
Like,
I'm like,
I don't
that might be
what the
worst
specifics
case.
of that were, but I mean, he almost has to get some jail time, right?
You would think,
very minimum, he had loaded guns in the airport, whether he meant for them to be there or not.
Yep.
And he didn't have an identification card.
That's what's going to be, I think, the big thing. Like the couple things I've seen, like that is what's going to be stressed the most. I think that and the feeding device thing, which is the worst of all of them, obviously for the jail time aspect alone. Like those are the two things that I don't think you can get around. Like, and again,
we're getting excited about the future of this cornerback group with him, with Marcus Jones, Jonathan Jones, all the Joneses. And then you had Christian Gonzalez. Like that secondary was going to be really good, and now you're almost definitely losing Jack Jones. It fucking sucks.
Yeah, that's what pisses you off the most. It's like, the talent of the player, and again, it goes back to all the problems that he's had. It goes, and then you factor in, I'm sure people saw at the John Morant tweet that he basically called out John Morant, I think literally a month to the day, I think it was, talking about, John Morant's firearm situation. I'm not going to read the quote. You can go find it on Twitter, but basically like saying you need to just like smarten up and, not throw your professional sports career away. A month later, Jack Jones is doing the exact same thing. So like it makes you mad that I feel like this is something and everything that he's kind of been involved in. With the burglary of the Panda Express, the suspended for team conduct stuff, like all things that I feel like could be avoidable.
Academics issues,
Academic
UFC,
stuff, yeah, absolutely.
allegedly mouthing off to Belichick, which if true is fucking nuts.
Yeah, exactly. The
The guy who
ball's on
gave you a
you. You're
chance.
rookie to like.
Allegedly, though, allegedly,
Mhm.
do want to stress that.
Mhm.
But it's not good. It's not good at all.
No, so that's the thing. It's like the only question you really have is where do the Patriots go from here? Like in his defense attorney, I keep forgetting the name, Rosemary Scapiccio. She kind of alluded to what might happen, or I think she gave maybe a little bit of a hint of what the Patriots might be doing during that tirade, talking about the media and everything. This was an Andrew Callahan tweet. Said, quote, she expressed gratitude to the Patriots and organizational leaders after claiming Jones was, quote unquote, almost fired. So that to me, I think maybe
That's a weird
tells
way to put it.
it is,
Fired?
yeah, because you don't get fired
It's
like
Burger King.
exactly. But I don't know, like, do you read into that maybe the Patriots have, you have to assume obviously the Patriots have already talked to him. They put the statement out as you read.
Yeah.
That to me kind of tells though, like the Patriots might be in kind of wait and see mode here. Yeah.
I think they might be waiting till that August 18th hearing.
Mm-hmm. Bad
Instead
timing of that too, huh? That's the second. I thought I saw it was the second Patriots preseason game, but then I heard
like
today
the
on
day before,
WEI it's the day
something like that.
before, so
Yeah.
it may be a little bit of a grace period there. But I did find that interesting. And then the other, obviously, Andrew Callahan tweet too, talking about it. So according to the police report, Jack Jones was, quote, in possession and in control of the duffel bag when he placed it onto the belt in the x-ray machine. His attorney then argued he had no intention of bringing any guns into Logan Airport, which again, you're going to say that as the defense attorney. I don't.
Allegedly.
Again, allegedly. Yep.
Allegedly didn't have any intention. We don't know.
Yeah,
yet.
I don't believe that.
Obviously.
Like,
I find that
that's what sucks too. Like, obviously you're not rooting for. I mean, I don't. That's gonna sound bad the way I word that, but like, I don't root for stupidity in any way, shape, or form. And you bringing loaded guns into an airport, which like one of the last places you should even think to do that. Like, I can't get around how stupid of a thing that is to do. And like, I don't see how he gets off on this. Like you said, I don't see how he doesn't face jail time at least, or definitely gonna get a fine. But there's just way too many things. Like you read all these specialists and all these experts, way too many things stacked against him that I don't think bodes well for him or the Patriots. And like you said, it sucks too, because you were hoping that, the Patriots had found something with this guy. He was a decent corner for the games that he played in last season, promising prospect to maybe pair with Christian Gonzalez, be that number 2 corner. And now that seemingly is all going to be for naught, because it does not seem like he is going to play for this team, if they decide to let him go, or if he, has to face jail time, or, whatever the situation might end up being.
Exactamundo. It's not looking good. Good luck to his attorney.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing too on her, like for just a quick little joke here to lighten the mood, like part of me kind of hopes after this giant tirade she goes on, the next time they're in court, she kind of just walks in and is like super polite and it's like, how's everybody doing today? Like everyone just completely flipped the script, throw people off. Not going to happen, but just throw people off for an absolute, like, who the hell's this lady?
Courtroom.
Yes, I can't imagine. Like I said, I saw her on Twitter. There's a Netflix documentary that she was featured in, like one of the more well-known. Yeah. So apparently she's very good at her job. So, as crazy as she might sound, or as aggressive as she might sound, Jack Jones seemingly has a good defense attorney, but this is such an uphill battle. I don't know how any positives come out of this.
I don't either. Speaking of positives, though,
try to end in a positive. Yep.
DeAndre Hopkins, still not out of the question that he's a Patriot. Was there Wednesday and Thursday last week. It was a productive visit. Didn't leave with an agreement, but he was posting with Matthew Judon, looked pretty happy. There's been cryptic tweets from Mac Wilson, Matthew Judon about it. We'll see what happens. But the most interesting this week was that Dalvin Cook
could be bringing a friend with him. Yeah.
And I don't think it's impossible to make it work, because if you're getting Hopkins, you're almost undoubtedly getting rid of one of Bourne or Parker. Maybe it's more so Parker, given his reaction to the news. And Lawrence Guy, like, what if they just, they don't want to deal with this Lawrence Guy stuff and him potentially wanting more money for what could be his last contract of his career. It's like, we'll cut ties with you too. Like, give Christian Barmore more of a role, and other guys in the interior. But I don't know. And they have interest in DJ Fluker too. What if they just replace him with DJ Fluker on a cheap deal?
Wouldn't be
Terry
the worst
Hopkins
thing.
here.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
maybe there are guys we're not even thinking about that they could cut ties with to make room. I don't know who that could be, but
Mhm.
my God, the idea of Hopkins and Cook being on this team is crazy. And if you have Hopkins, you can get Cook
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
not
not
out of
like,
the
oh yeah,
possibility.
I want to play with Hopkins unless he goes to this team.
Mhm.
You will go where Hopkins goes, as far as
Seems
we know.
like it. You hope
And
it's not
Adam
like a smoke
Schefter
and
and
mirrors thing,
Jeremy
but
Fowler are backing this up.
oh,
This
perfect
is
then.
this
So
is no fluke. It could happen. And
sign me up then. Like why is
look,
it still not done then?
some people, might think this is crazy. The Patriots are a Super Bowl contender if they get both of them.
I wouldn't dispute that. Got a solid defense. Your offense
'Cause, like,
hopefully bounces back. Like again, just looking at it on paper from last year, this year, if you can add uh Dalvin Cook, D Hop, Juju Smith Schuster to your offense last year that struggled, moving parts here and there, like that's obviously a huge win.
dude,
And
if you have Dalvin Cook and Ramondre Stevenson, you can
forget it.
tally 180 rushing yards a game between
Yeah,
the two of
Matt
them.
could hand the ball off 30 times and be all set, ready to go. Like,
Yeah, like you just have a crazy amount of options, and now you have two really good tight ends too. It's something. I just hope they get one of them.
absolutely, yeah,
Like
exactly.
if they don't
Yeah.
get Hopkins somehow and they get Cook, I'd be cool with that too.
Mhm.
But I don't know if I'd like the term on Cook. I don't know if he wants what he wants for years. But
You wonder if he takes like a
now-
1-year deal just to kind of play with Hawk, because I don't know what the term would be on. You got to think
I
it'd
don't
be like a
know,
2-year
yeah.
deal on Hopkins. Maybe, I mean, Cook would probably want to be here as long as or be wherever Hopkins goes as long as he does. So maybe they're a tandem thing. But
yeah, I don't know, but it's really something. It
Mhm.
really is something.
I was going to ask you, did you have any thoughts? Because the other thing that kind of dropped on Hopkins, which may throw some water on maybe him coming to the Patriots and maybe will worry you a little bit. Albert Breer had this to say when talking about Hopkins. I think he was on Boston Sports Tonight or was on one of the NBC Sports Boston shows. Has said, "quote This tells me that he's when obviously this isn't refer to him visiting here, but leaving without a contract. He said, quote This tells me he's holding out hope. He's going to play for a true contender like a Buffalo or Kansas City. The one thing to watch is Kansas City almost has no cap space. They're working on a long-term deal for Chris Jones to lower the cap number. If this happens, the door could open back up for him, being Hopkins, to go to Kansas City, which kind of worries me a little bit. The other report, this is from the Athletics, Tim Graham, said 2 anonymous NFL executives indicated that Hopkins would like something close to a 1-year deal that OBJ signed with Baltimore, which is worth $15 million plus $3 million in incentives. Any thoughts on either one of those? More so the Burt Breer comments about him potentially holding out for a true contender.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about that right now.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I am worried about is 15 plus 3 million in incentives.
Yep.
I don't think Belichick will do that.
No, and I think that probably throws you out of getting both him and Cook.
Yeah.
But I wonder too, back on the flip side of that, like I wonder, like you said, if Hopkins comes here, or rather if Hopkins obviously now knows this, that Dalvin Cook wants to come, like anywhere those two guys go, unless it's to just an absolute like Arizona or back to Arizona, it wouldn't happen. But just work with me here. Like a garbage team like that,
yeah,
those two guys make any team outside of that like a contender. So you have to wonder if even if, it's New England, it's Tennessee, if both guys want to go there, they kind of throw out the Hopkins is waiting for a contender, a true contender to sign him. Like, I'm kind of fumbling my words here, but you know what point I'm trying to get across.
I absolutely get what you mean. I mean that you just, oh God, I can't even like that offense would just really be something.
It would,
and my God, something. It really is. I can't even put the words together for it right now. And who knows? Maybe the Patriots would have to do more than cutting Baker with the receiver and Lawrence Guy, but I don't know. I have faith.
At this point, you have
to make it work.
Exactly. Like if this guy wants to be here, like you said, all indications seem the meetings went really well. I thought I saw a tweet that he had like a long one-on-one with Bill Belichick, so that obviously has to bode pretty well. Like as I said last week, this is the most excited I've been about, or most like hoping that something happens, or has a good feeling that something's going to happen with a deal getting done, because like it makes too much sense. I feel like for both teams, like Hopkins obviously seems to enjoy being here, seems to have a good connection with Bill, with guys like Matt Judon, as you mentioned. Patriots obviously still need a number one receiver. With the injuries, like I said on last week's show, like you don't really know about Juju, you don't really know about Tyquan Thornton. It would make sense to maybe exceed yourself a little bit And then too, like just I thought about this the other day. They don't go hand in hand together, but you have this negative publicity with Jack Jones. Why wouldn't you want to try to build that back up and, try to have a positive, hey, we signed DeAndre Hopkins, maybe try to push the Jack Jones thing to the backside a little bit just to get somebody, some sort of positive talk about the Patriots going back up.
They could have their Bruins Bergeron and Krejci moment last year when they were just dropping pictures and gifs.
Yeah. And then
pictures of them and just everybody freaks out.
mm-hmm.
They can make this work. And I don't know if there's a suitor for Hopkins out there that can make it work as easy as the Patriots. So that's why I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Patriots have everyone is talking about it, the most money they could offer. And then like you've heard nothing else outside of the Patriots in Tennessee. And that, like I said last week, I don't know why he'd want to go to Tennessee. I'm sure a great place to be, but that football team I think is worse shape than the Patriots would be if, like you said, they would get him and Dalvin Cook.
Oh boy, let's just get a decision by next show. How about that? That's
what I said earlier. I'm like, I'd like the Patriots right now. Earlier when the rumors about Porzingis trade, like I said it earlier, I'm like, I'd like the Patriots just to one up the Celtics right now and be like, hey, I know you guys just traded for Porzingis, but we're signing D-Hop, so take that, like throw it all on the table, type of thing. But as of right now on Twitter, nothing has come to be about anything. So unfortunately, once again, no breaking news. Outside of that, the Pistons, Cavs, and Pacers have made inquiries about Tobias Harris, which has nothing to do with us. But again, with the NBA stuff, just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, I also just saw that. But that is going to wrap it up. Episode 148, a loaded episode here for you. A week ahead of the NHL draft. We got the NBA draft tomorrow. We'll talk about that next week and preview the NHL draft, my mock draft and stuff. Maybe some Bruins news, maybe a trade, maybe a buyout or something, maybe both. We shall see. Thank you so much for listening. You can find us wherever you find your podcasts. You can find us on the Full Press Coverage Twitch and YouTube channels as well. You can find me on Twitter at Mike_Cratty. You can follow Ryan at Ryan_Salvaggio and the show at Sal and Cratty Pod. You can find us on TikTok as well. Throw the name into the search bar. And until next time, big episode next week. Stay safe, stay healthy, be nice to people, all that good stuff. And let's just will Hopkins and Cook to the Patriots into existence, and Bergeron and Krejci, or one of them at least, both staying. See you next week. Peace out.